Hey everyone, this is Arcadius and welcome back to Naval Creed. Today we'll be going over the stats clash for the Tier 3 cruisers. However, there has been a couple updates since our last video, and so we'll be going over all the information from that. To start off with, we have two new sister ships. First one, which actually just came out today, is for Gneisenau, German Tier 7 battleship. I have tentatively named it Kiel in recognition of a German port. That may or may not change. I don't know if I'm completely satisfied with that name yet, but this is what the camo looks like, and it's actually pretty decent. I don't know if this is a historical camo or not, but if it is, that's also pretty nice. If it's not, still looks good on the ship. Not going to complain about it. Another camo that came out last week was for the British battleship Warspite, and I've renamed her Malaya. Which is actually another Queen Elizabeth ship. However, she was never upgraded to the extent Warspite was, but I like the name. So pretty standard blue and white camo. I like it. It's not terrible. It's pretty decent. I like it. And before we go into the stats, there has been a couple more ships that we can preview, but we cannot play yet. So we're gonna go through those. And I think there's actually only American ships. Yeah. So we have three new American ships we can preview. So the first one is a new 8.5 matchmaking heavy cruiser. This is Oregon City. We've already seen a little bit of information on her. There was stats of Norfolk, Oregon City, Albany, and Vallejo. So all four of those cruisers had information released on them at the same time. We already have Norfolk in the game, and now we can take a look at Oregon City. Not quite sure why it needs 3 bridges, but that's just what the model is. Just to put it quite simply, it's an intermediate step between Baltimore and Des Moines. So we kind of have the same Baltimore guns, but we have a lot more powerful AA than Baltimore, but not as strong as Des Moines necessarily. You can kind of see the similarities here. I know this was a design. I don't actually know if any of these were made or not, but I do know that it was at least a recognized design. As you can see here, you have the 40 millimeters on the side. You also have the 5-inch. I'm assuming there's 20 millimeter somewhere. Actually, it looks like there's just 40 mils. Regardless, so pretty standard setup. You have the Mark 16 8-inch guns, or my apologies, the 15s. So they're not the autoloaders of the Mark 16s that the Des Moines gets, but you still have pretty decent guns, and you're not actually going up that far in matchmaking. Baltimore's an 8.2 and Oregon City is an 8.5. So you're getting a little bit extra health, I think, and some more AA, but you're not really changing your gameplay at any way. So I think she's pretty good right here. The other ship, which is actually almost an exact copy of this ship, Albany, is just now released for preview in today's update, and it's actually pretty much just a copy paste of Oregon City with a couple details that are changed. But that was my main question when the information first came out on these two ships, is they looked exactly the same. So I wasn't really sure what the difference was going to be, considering Oregon City is going to be a normal tech tree ship between Baltimore and Des Moines. That answers that question, because Albany, as you can see here, is actually going to be a prism ship. You can see the prism thing right there. So yeah, the only difference I've actually been able to see in the model is that instead of 40 millimeter guns, she has the 3-inch cannon AA mounts. Not as many. As you can see here, there was actually a slight difference in the AA on the side. When the first information came out and we reviewed that, I did mention it looked like there was a slight difference in the midship section. But besides that, these two ships are exactly the same. You can take a look here. You have Oregon City there, and Albany. Nothing changes besides the 3-inch and the 40 millimeter guns. However, my main reasoning for why I think this is a prism ship is because I think she's going to get radar. Norfolk had radar, and currently she is the only heavy cruiser of the American, well, any kind of American heavy cruiser that gets radar right now. Usually that's only a light cruiser, and you have the, well, Missouri can get radar, but those are the only American ships that can. So I'm assuming this ship is also going to get radar. And she's also at a 9.0 matchmaking. So she does actually get a little bit better AA as well. I did run through the numbers, so the 3-inch do actually pay off a bit. And difference between 8.5 and 9.0, not that much. You're still going to run into the same ship at that tier. And that brings us to the last ship that we can preview, and it's actually one of the ones I've been most excited for. However, it's not for the currency that I kind of want it to be. Is the tier 10, well, in game it's called Maine, but I already have a Maine with my Montana sister ship, so I've renamed her Rhode Island. And this is the Super American Dreadnought with 5 triple 457mm guns, or just about 18-inch guns. Yeah, this ship is absolutely massive, but she also has a ton of firepower. Just to put it in perspective, Ekaterina, when she first came out, had the highest alpha of armor piercing at over 200,000 possible damage if each shell did maximum damage. And she held that title until we have Rhode Island, because with full alpha, her salvo is 230,000 plus damage. The strongest in the game by far. And honestly, she's a terrifying force. She has a ton of health as well, the second most health, I think. Don't quote me on that yet. In the game at 112,000, you have 40% torpedo damage resistance. You can see all your stats here. Here's your guns. A lot of damage, pretty fast shells too. They're faster than Montana. Range is pretty standard. Secondary range is the largest on any American battleship that's not Illinois at 6.4. It's only by 100 meters because everything else has like 6.3. But still, you have an entire Omaha on each side with 6-inch guns. So that's pretty powerful as well. And yeah, you have torpedoes that are 8-kilometer torpedoes that hit as hard as Fletcher torpedoes. Your speed is going to be your main downfall, as you're the slowest at 25.2 knots. But you can also take a look at your AA stats. And yeah, not good ranges, but look at those damages. If you go for a full AA build, you might actually be able to do something about that. My only problem is she is a rank point ship. I don't like rank point ships. It's very hard for me to acquire rank points. I even actually started dabbling in arena games lately. Didn't get many, but I had a few. But yeah, I really wanted this to be for something other than rank points, so I can understand why. But that just means that they kind of have a favoritism towards American ships for rank points, as we have Timmerman as a destroyer, we have Cheyenne as a cruiser, we now have Rhode Island or Maine as a battleship, and we have FDR or Coral Sea as a carrier for American. So that's like most of the rank point ships. There's only Charlemagne and Moskva that are other rank point ships. So a lot of American rank points. So I can't say I'm surprised, but I can say I'm kind of disappointed. But instead of Moskva now being the ship I was going to go for rank points, I will now be going for Rhode Island because I want this ship. This looks very, very fun. With that, that does kind of go over the stuff that's in game right now. There is another picture that was released in the Naval Creed news page on Facebook, and that we will be going over in just a moment. And that has a couple interesting American battleships coming up as well. Alright, so this is the picture that was released on actually earlier this week. And they did it again. They released another Iowa-class battleship. I've officially run out of names for them because there were 6 planned, there was 4 built, 2 not built. One of those was Illinois. So this one's going to be Kentucky as the other uncompleted yet planned Iowa-class battleship. If they come out with any more, I'm going to have to start picking names from other states. But I really hope they don't make any more because there's a lot of Iowa-class battleships in the game now. More than Yamatos, I think. But they're pretty close. However, this Iowa is special because not only does she have her 16-inch guns, but you are not mistaken, those secondaries are the same dual-purpose auto-loading 6-inch that you have on Worcester. which actually makes me question her AA power. She might have a very, very strong AA suite. So if we go through the current Iowa battleships in the game, I would have the normal Iowa as a accuracy build. I would have Missouri focus for gun rotation and reload because she already has amazing accuracy. Illinois for secondaries, and once this one comes out, I will have this one as a full AA build. Get me a little bit of everything. So I'm excited about this one. I think I don't know what tier she's going to be at. I want to say 9.6, just like Illinois. I hesitate to say that because she's a good 9.0 ship, but I think with the good AA power, she's going to be a 9.6. But besides that, I think she's just going to be a normal Iowa, though her bridge kind of looks funny to me. So there might be something with her superstructure going on as well, but that might just be because she has the 6-inch gun in front and not on the sides. To be determined. And then we have this ship, which I have no idea, but I'm going to call it Virginia. And it looks like she's going to have 457s, the same as Rhode Island, perhaps, but with only 3. And she has a nice mix of dual purpose 5-inch on the side. Pretty standard, I would think. So I think her mainstay is going to be her 457mm guns. Again, I would probably think a very high matchmaking tier for her. I don't think 10.0 because I think that's not enough firepower for an American battleship, but it could be. It could be a new 10.0 battleship we're seeing here. Maybe a branch off of Colorado like they just did with the Japanese with Amagi going down to Hiraga and Shinomi. Maybe we're going to see something after Colorado now. To be determined. I don't know. But yeah, both of these ships, quite interested in them, especially Kentucky. Virginia, not so much. Pretty straightforward. She's going to get like the 18-inch guns, but she's still going to be pretty powerful, without a doubt. Probably pretty slow, but you're not going for speed, you're going for firepower. So I'm kind of interested to see what goes on with that. But these two ships might be previewed in the game pretty soon. So if you see them, well, you saw it here first. And I really do like the idea of the dual purpose 6-inch autoloaders. I'm really interested to see how that works. You only have 6 of them total, so you actually have an entire rooster on you. You have 1 aft, 1 fore, and 2 on each side. So you don't have 5 secondaries that can fire off to a side. You can only have 4. So it kind of decreased there, but they are 6-inch. I'm curious to see what their range is going to be, though. Alright, so enough of new stuff. That is all the new stuff I have for you today. So that goes over the last 2 updates. We have a couple new ships we can look at, and a couple ships that we can, well, look at pictures of, and then a couple new camos. Nothing other than that. Oh, actually, there was a new decoration. There's a Halloween ghost that came out in today's update. It's actually pretty decent. It's not that much if you want to purchase it. It gives you like 4% speed. It gives you 1500 more HP in PvE matches, and it gives you some bonus and gold and experience. So nothing special, but I do like my speed and my health. Those are my 2 favorite things in terms of stats. So I definitely have that, and it is now on Ninghai, which is one of the ships we will be going over today. So let's start going over stats class for Tier 3 cruisers. Alright, so Tier 3 cruisers. So this includes tiers, well, since Tenryu is at 2.7, so 2.7 to 3.5. But pretty much just rounded up to 3 to 3.5. Now I say 3.5 because even though it's a 3.5, it can be tossed into Tier 4 and Tier 3 games. We did mention that a little bit in last week's Stats Clash with Wix, the Tier 3 destroyer. But now we actually have some variation. So we're going to have some Tier 3 and 3.5 cruisers. So not only will we see a couple of these cruisers this week, but we'll also see them when we go over Tier 4 cruisers, because they can also be tossed into Tier 4 games. But yeah, so the cruisers we're going to be going over today are the Japanese cruisers Tenryu, the Japanese cruiser Kuma, which is the 3.5, or one of them, the American cruiser St. Louis, or St. Louis, that's probably how I'll say it a lot. I say it interchangeably, so just keep that in mind. The German cruiser Kolberg, the newest Pan-Asian cruiser Ninghai at a 3.5, and lastly, the British cruiser Caledon, which is also a 3.5. So between these 5 cruisers, or 6, actually there's 6, We're going to be going over all the stats and seeing which ones have better advantages and which ones have disadvantages and such as that. So 3.0 matchmaking isn't really strong. You have a lot of very powerful battleships. You have the one destroyer. You have a lot of different cruisers with different playstyles. Some are fast, some are slow, some have good guns, some have good torpedoes, some have the banks of both. Some are more maneuverable. Very diverse. Battleships are just slow with lots of guns. There's not going to be much to go over that. And then there's no carriers out because we do not see a lot of carriers until tier 4. So pretty straightforward. Alright, so let's go over general stats. So St. Louis has the most health at 29,500, and Tenryu has the lowest at 17,700, which is actually quite a big difference. What's that? 12,200 difference or something like that? Actually, a little bit less. But so that's almost 2 Tenryus. So a lot of health there. Ninghai has a lot as well, and so does Kuma. Though Ninghai is the only cruiser to actually have a torpedo damage percentile resistance. It has 10% resistance to torpedoes, so 10% of the damage that any torpedo can do is automatically just ignored. Any torpedo that hits you is only going to do 90% of the total damage, which isn't a lot, honestly, considering you don't have that much health to begin with, but every little bit helps, I guess. Belt armor, St. Louis actually has the most at about 4 inches, and it's actually quite hard to Citadel St. Louis with a cruiser. You really need a battleship to do that, and even then it's kind of hard. The easiest is through the nose with like Dreadnought or something. Dreadnought is very good at taking on St. Louis's and just obliterating them. It's so fun. Tenryu and Kuma, not really a lot. You have less than 3 inches of armor. Caledon has 3 inches. Colbrick has a little bit more. Ninghai doesn't actually have a belt armor value, but it looked like the highest value on the armor was 30 millimeters, but if you actually look at the stats, it says 51. So I'm not really sure which one it is, but even if it is 30 or 51, it's the lowest regardless. So Ninghai is not exactly strong, at least armor-wise, but she's still a very fun ship. Turning circle radius. So Tenryu and Kuma trade armor for speed, because that's the Japanese design quality, I guess you could say. That's a very common quality for the rest of the cruisers. They are very fast cruisers, but they don't have a lot of armor. They're just floating citadels. So you might have low armor, but your turning circle radius is also pretty bad. Kuma having the worst at 640 meters. St. Louis actually has the best turning circle radius at 450 meters, but that's because she is slow as a brick. She can turn because she's not going fast at all. Ninghai, Colberg, and Caledon are all pretty similar as well at about 460 to 470, so you're not far behind St. Louis, but you do go faster, or at least a little bit. Speed-wise, Kuma's blazingly fast at 34.5 knots. Tenryu is not that far behind at 32.5. And then you have Colberg and Caledon slightly behind at 29 and 27. And then you have Ninghai and St. Louis, which are barely faster than battleships at 22 and 23 knots. So nothing special again. Their Invincible will actually be faster than you, and I'm sure a couple other battleships are faster. And if they're not, they're about 21 knot speed anyways, so you're not going to be outrunning anything. Surface detectability, Tenryu and Ninghai are actually the stealthiest at 8.2 and 8.7 kilometers, with Kalidon and Kuma actually having the worst. Concealment, air detectability, there's actually not going to be any planes at this tier. Obviously the destroyers don't have any, the cruisers don't have any, the battleships don't have any, and there's no carriers. So air detectability is not actually that much of a problem at this tier. For the 3.5 cruisers, it is important because they're tossed into tier 4 with carriers. But if they're tossed into tier 3 games, it's not a problem at all. But if you do happen to have any aircraft, air detectability, again, Tenryu and Ninghai. Actually, no, it's Tenryu and Caledon have the best concealment. Same with Colberg. And then on Kuma and St. Louis have the worst air detectability. Not a real problem there. And that brings us to guns. So Tenryu has 4 140mm guns. Kuma has 7 140mm guns, but only can use a broadside of 6. St. Louis has 14 6-inch guns, but only has a broadside of 8, considering most of them are broadsiding casemates. Kolberg has 12 4-inch guns. You have 6 on each side, so a 6-gun broadside. Ninghai has 3 twin turrets of 140 millimeters, so a 6-gun broadside there. And Caledon has 5 single 152 mils or 6-inch guns that you are all in the center line, so you can still use all 5 guns on the broadside. So St. Louis and Caledon have the largest guns at 6-inch, and Kolberg has the smallest at 4-inch. There's not going to be that much difference between Dresden and Kolberg, by the way. So if you're actually going up the tech tree, Dresden and Kolberg are just copycats. So you know how to play one, you know how to play the other. And that does change at tier 4, though. So 180-degree turn time. So that only really affects the cruisers that have guns that are not on the broadside. So that's Tenryu, Kuma, and Ninghai, and Caledon, because Kolberg and St. Louis just have most of their guns on the sides. So Tenryu, Kuma have and Ninghai all have 18-second turret rotation, and then you have Caledon with 12 seconds. So it's a little bit faster in Caledon. Rate of fire, Kolberg has the fastest at 15 rounds a minute, and then you have Caledon with the lowest at 6 rounds a minute. And then everything else in between. Tenryu and Kuma's guns are actually exactly the same. You just get a few more of them with Kuma. So yeah, there's no real difference there. Rate of fire, in terms of reload, Kolberg reloads every 4 seconds, and then Caledon reloads every 10 seconds. So with every 2 salvos Kolberg can send out, Caledon can fire 1, and Kolberg is spitting out 6 rounds every salvo, so that's 12 rounds versus Caledon's 5. So you can clearly see how Kolberg is just going to dish out a ton of shells, even if they might not necessarily do the most damage, considering she has the lowest damage in terms of high explosive at only 1600, and Caledon is actually doing the most at 3100, and then you can see all the others are at 2300, and then St. Louis is at 24. Fire chance, Caledon has the highest percentile, with Kolberg having the lowest. But we'll get to how many fires that is in a moment. But HE piercing, Kolberg has the lowest at 20 mils because she only has 4-inch guns. And then St. Louis and Caledon have the most of 30 mils because they have 5-inch. But honestly, the 140s are not that far behind because they can pen 28. Just a rule of thumb with these cruisers, considering you're actually starting to get some decent armor, versus like the tier 2 and 1 cruisers, which are just absolute trash armor. Considering you actually have decent armor piercing on cruisers is recommended, and high explosive is recommended on destroyers and battleships. If you're at range, you can try armor piercing if you really want to, but most of the time I just try and burn the battleships at this tier because you don't really want to be that close to battleships. They don't have that much range, or accuracy, I should say that. But if they hit, they're going to hurt a lot, whether they use armor piercing or high explosive. So recommendation is to stay at range and use your guns, or if you have torpedoes, try and close in as quick as you can and torpedo them, because that's going to do a ton of damage. So yeah, HE shell velocity. Let's see which one has the fastest. Caledon has the fastest at 861 meters per second. But the 140s are not far behind at 850, and then you have Kolberg and St. Louis at just over 700. So quite a big difference there. Armor piercing damages, Caledon again has the most of 3000 damage per shell, followed by St. Louis, and then the rest of them are about the same at 2300 and 2200. AP shell velocity, similar story. Caledon actually gets faster at 936 meters per second. The ship is actually pretty decent with your guns. That is one of the only places she is very strong, but she still has a lot of firepower. And then everything else is actually the same. Ninghai, Kuma, and Tenryu all have 850 meters per second, and St. Louis and Kolberg are all about 700. So in terms of number of shells, so Tenryu can fire 40 shells per minute, Kuma can fire 60, St. Louis can fire 56, Kolberg can fire 90 shells, Ninghai can fire 48, and Kalidon can only fire 30. So pretty wide variety there. So in a minute, Colbert can fire 60 more shells than Caledon. So a lot of damage to be dealt there, especially since some of their stats are quite similar, at least in armor piercing. High explosive, maybe not so much. Now the number of possible fires. Now this is just on numbers. This is not a representative of what you actually see in the game. So Tenryu has the possibility of setting 2 fires, Kuma with 4, St. Louis 4, Colberg with 5, Ninghai 3, and Caledon 2. So even though Kalidon has the highest fire percent, she has the least, or well, she matches Tenryu, but the least number of possible fires set considering her slow rate of fire. And Kolberg, even though she has the lowest percent fire chance, even though she has the fastest fire rate of fire, though, she can set a lot more fires according to the numbers. Now in game, I have found Kuma and Kolberg to be pretty decent at setting fires, and to an extent St. Louis, but maybe not that good. Tenryu, the numbers aren't lying. You don't set many fires with her. Ninghai, I don't have enough games in her, honestly, to have an opinion about that, but I don't think you should have a problem. Then Caledon, yeah, not a good fire starter. She's pretty decent with her armor piercing, and that's what you kind of want to stay with. So, high explosive alpha. St. Louis has the most, considering she has a broadside of 8 6-inch guns. That's going to be unmatched. So she has almost 20,000 HE alpha, followed closely by Caledon with 15.5, and then Kuma and Ninghai have the same at 13.8, and then 9.6 for Kolberg and 9.2 for Tenryu. Armor piercing alpha, again, St. Louis is the top at 19.2. Caledon has 15, and then the others have 13, and then Tenryu is, again, the lowest at 88. So Tenryu is not going to be a good damage dealer in terms of guns. Honestly, though, you just want to play her like a big destroyer, and that's how I advised you to play in the video that's specifically on her. She's just a destroyer leader, pretty much. Your torpedoes are going to be your best friend. Nothing else. But, yeah, all these other ships are pretty decent gunboats. Especially Kolberg. You have pretty small guns, but your rate of fire is pretty substantial, honestly. And your armor piercing can be quite useful. However, the angle that your shells are coming in at, considering your shells are pretty slow velocity, means I would recommend high explosive, honestly. I just like burning everything with that ship. Alright, what's next? Gun range. So it looks like St. Louis actually has the lowest gun range of 10.4 kilometers. And then Kuma has the most at 12.3, and everything else is in between. Honestly, that's surprising in terms of St. Louis, because you're the slowest cruiser, and you also have the shortest gun range. So not only are you going to take a while to get to the, well, in a range where you can actually do anything about it, but you're also going to have to take a long time because you have to get pretty close to do that. So if you're going cruiser, Kuma can sail circles around you and also can give a 2-kilometer buffer, almost, where she can shoot at you and you can't do anything about it. And her shell velocity is faster, so she's going to be a little bit more accurate. And you're not a fast target, so you're just going to have to suck it all up. You do have better armor and you have more health, but how quickly is that not going to be an advantage if you're just being peppered? So, yeah, St. Louis is not a fun ship, honestly. I don't like playing her that much. Out of all of these, actually, though, Kuma and Ninghai are pretty fun. But yeah, everything else is about the same gun range. You only have Caledon and Kuma as being kind of exceptional in that regards. And then St. Louis is the only Tier 3 cruiser that actually has secondaries. It has a few 3-inch secondaries on the side. We'll go over those later. But they have a range of 3.6 kilometers. Honestly, though, if anything's within 3.6 kilometers, you're in trouble. And even if you're not, 3-inch guns are not going to do that much anyways. They're not exactly accurate either. But you do have quite a few of them. Alright, anti-aircraft defense. Again, there's not going to be a lot of aircraft at this tier, but if there ever happens to be, we have a couple ships that can handle it a little bit better than normal. So Tenryu has 3 AA guns with 4 damage. It's pretty trash. You're not going to shoot down anything. That's fine. Kuma, she is a 3.5, so she will be tossed into carrier games, so that's why her AA is a little bit better. She has 8 AA guns with total damage of 22, out to about 3.1 or 2 kilometers or something. St. Louis has 8 AA guns, but only 6 damage at 1 kilometer. Not going to do anything. Goldberg has absolutely nothing. No AA guns and no damage at all, so yeah, don't expect absolutely anything from her, but no aircraft, so it doesn't matter. Ninghai is also a 3.5, so you will run into more aircraft at this tier. She has 12 guns and the best AA defense of any tier 3 cruiser. 54 total DPS, 32 at about 3.2, and then 22 at 1.5. So a full AA build with her is pretty decent. If you do have her, I would recommend a full AA build. It's really fun to be able to actually do something with your AA at this tier. There's not many ships that can knock down the carrier aircraft at this tier. I don't know if she's still out for purchase or not. I know she was a recent ship. I don't know if she's been taken off the purchase list or not, though. If she is still available, though, definitely would still recommend her. She's a really fun ship. I don't have any problem with her yet. She might be slow and have no armor, but she's pretty fun. So yeah, and then we have Caledon, which is another 3.5. We only have 2 AA guns. We still have somewhat decent damage of 12. Well, at least compared to everything else, that is. And then it's 3 DPS at 3 kilometers, 7 at 2, and 2 at 1. Nothing really special, though. I don't really care much about her AA. That brings us to Torpedoes next, because we have a couple things after this, but Torpedoes is next. 4 out of these 6 cruisers have torpedoes, and those are Tenryu, Kuma, Ninghai, and Caledon. So Torpedo Ranges, Tenryu, Kuma, and Ninghai all have 7-kilometer torpedoes that go 57 knots. Kalidon have 5.2 kilometer torpedoes that do 52 knots, so the shortest range and the slowest speed. Rate of fire, though, Ninghai has the best at 1.88 rounds per minute or a 31-second reload, followed by Caledon at 1.33 or a 45-second reload, then Kuma at 1.09 or a 55-second reload, and then lastly Tenryu with a 1.0 rate of fire, which is 60 seconds to reload. So pretty much with Ninghai you can fire twice in the time it takes to reload Tenryu, but Tenryu also has the advantage in number of tubes, considering she has 6 to a broadside. Kuma has 4 to a broadside, Ninghai has 2, and Caledon has 4. Torpedo damage, Tenryu has the least damage per torpedo at only 7,100, but that's not that much difference because the most is only 8,000, and that's shared between Ninghai and Caledon. Launcher damage, so Tenryu actually has triples, so if all 3 hit, it gives you 21,300 damage. Kuma only has twins. She has 4 twins, 2 on each side. Each twin is only going to do 14,600. And then Ninghai has a twin that can do 16,000. Caledon, per launcher is a question. It's based on how you see a launcher, because Caledon can actually single fire her torps. She has 2 twin launchers on each side, but you can launch 1 torpedo at a time. So if you count 1 launcher as 1 torpedo, then it's obviously only going to be 8,000. If you count a launcher as a twin, then it can do 16,000. So I counted 1 launcher as a twin in this case. So that will give you a launcher broadside of 16,000. And then a full broadside, Tenryu can do 42,600 damage. Kuma can do 29,200. Caledon can do 32,000. And then Ninghai can actually do the least at 16,000 because she only has the 1 twin on each side. Flood chance, Ninghai and Caledon have 70.82%, Kuma has 64.62%, and then Tenryu has the least at 62.85%. Detectability wise for the torpedoes, Ninghai's can be detected the farthest at 2.0, Kuma and Tenryu have 1.7, and then Caledon has 1.1. British cruiser torpedoes may not be exactly spectacular in terms of range and speed, but they are usually pretty stealthy, and that's something we see for the rest of the line as well. So we'll come back to the torpedoes in a moment, but we also have some secondaries and consumables to go over. Again, St. Louis is the only one that has secondaries, range of 3.6 kilometers. She has 9 3-inch secondaries to a side. She has 18 total, plus her 14 6-inch guns. That ship is actually just made out of armor and guns, and they tossed engines in as an afterthought, so she can go 23 knots. 22, something like that. I think it's 22 actually. They do fire high explosives, so you do have a chance of setting fires, and I have played games where the secondaries do set fires. So that will add to the number of fires you can set. So 4 possible fires from the main 6-inch, plus if you're close enough, the secondaries as well. So you can technically be an okay-ish fire starter, but honestly, she's not a fun ship. And then consumables. All ships have a damage control party. Tenryu and Kuma have only a 5-second duration on DCP. St. Louis and Kolberg have 10-second DCP, and Ninghai and Caledon have a 15-second DCP. All of them have a 1-minute cooldown and unlimited charges, and then Kalidon actually gets a heal. The only ship of this tier that gets more than 1 consumable. She gets a 30-second heal that reloads in 1.5 minutes, and she has 2 charges of it. Which is good because you can actually be citadeled by high explosive. I've done it many times. So you might not be able to take damage, but you can heal it. So you're going to stay at range because you have the second best range. You have really good shell velocity, the best at this tier in terms of high explosive and armor piercing, and you have the hardest hitting shells as well. So you're kind of a sniper that can replenish its health every once in a while. So yeah, so that's the basic stats for all of these ships. Tenryu is just a big destroyer. Kuma is an HE spammer that can stay at range because her maneuverability is trash, but her speed is very, very good with the farthest shooting range. So she's also a good sniper. I like to play her as a high explosive spammer. She sets a ton of fires, especially if you switch targets. I've had games where I've had over 20 fires. St. Louis is a slow and lumbering barrel of guns that if you get close to her, she will blow you out of the water. But she will get there very slowly, and you have to get close because she has very short range. Kolberg is she's just a machine gun of 4-inch shells. They might not do a lot of damage, but they will set a lot of fires and do a lot of continuous damage. And she's pretty fast as well with pretty good maneuverability, but practically no armor. Ninghai, you have a pretty decent arrangement of your weaponry because you actually have twin turrets instead of singles or casemates. And you also have the best AA to shoot down all the planes that you will never see at matchmaking tier 3. And you're also pretty slow, but you have a good mix of guns, AA, torpedoes, and maneuverability, so a jack of all trades kind of ship. Then Caledon, which is your sniper gameplay, again, but mainly with armor piercing. So a lot of mixed choices. If you want slow but powerful, you have St. Louis or Ninghai. Or if you want fast and sniperish, you can go for Kuma or Caledon. Or if you just want full machine gun, you can go with Kolberg. And then Tenryu is just a destroyer. Going back to the torpedoes, this is the torpedo damage chart that we started going over last time with Wix. So if you go full broadside to all of these targets, will you be able to one-shot them? So for Tenryu, you actually have the strongest broadside for torpedoes, considering you have 2 triple launchers that do a lot of damage. You can sink all destroyers, which is not really a surprise, all cruisers, including Ninghai with her 10% torpedo damage resistance, and you can even one-shot Nassau and Danton, but everything else past that you cannot one-shot with your torpedoes. So Invincible, Kawachi, Corbeil, Dreadnought, Wyoming, and Mikasa are all safe. They're going to take a ton of damage, mind you, and they probably can be finished off within a couple salvos if you aim your shells right, or finished off by other teammates. But in a straight one-on-one, if they're full health, you will not be able to sink them. Kuma is actually even worse. She can take out the destroyers, and she can take out all cruisers except St. Louis. Even if you put all 4 torpedoes on a broadside into St. Louis, she'll have just enough health to survive. I think she'll have like 300 health. Obviously, if you start a flooding, you might be able to finish her off before they can repair that. But it's really down to how good the player is. And you cannot one-shot any kind of battleship at all. Obviously, though, with Kuma, you have 4 more torpedoes on the other side. So if you kind of double that, you might be able to take out some battleships if you do a 180 turn and you land all of your torpedoes again. But I didn't account for that. I'm just doing broadsides. Ninghai, you can sink the destroyer and that's it. You don't even have enough broadside damage to sink a Tenryu. Your broadside is only 16,000, and Tenryu would still be alive with 1,700 health left. Obviously, though, you can pretty much one-shot that with your guns afterwards, but in just straight torpedoes, you're not going to sink any cruisers and definitely not any battleships. But your rate of fire is pretty decent at 31-second reload, so you can just continuously spam your torpedoes. And then Caledon, you can sink all destroyers and all cruisers, but you cannot one-shot any of the battleships. But that's just using one side. Similar to Kuma, you have 4 more torpedoes on the other side, and you can single launch them, so you can actually pretty much get all 8 to hit at the same time. And if you ripple fire them, because then you can launch them one at a time, you can get it so the reload, once one's done, you can just turn to the other side and fire those, and then go back to the other side and fire those. Very similar gameplay to Wix, that is. But in a straight, just broadside, you can only go up to St. Louis in terms of health. And that will wrap up today's video on Stats Clash. So that shows all the new material that is out, all the upcoming material, and upcoming possible material in terms of Kentucky and Virginia. We just have pictures, no stats, no nothing yet, just conjecture. And then the stats for tier 3 cruisers. So like I said, all these cruisers are pretty fun. Tenryu, I don't like Tenryu actually. Kuma's pretty fun. St. Louis just trash in my book. Coburg is not bad, but not necessarily fun. But you can have quite a few good games with her, especially if you use high explosives just to burn everything. Ninghai, I think this ship is a very good ship, but the stats try and say otherwise. But I do enjoy this ship a lot better than any other ship at this tier. And then Caledon is just Caledon. So whatever your preference is, whether you want slow and made of guns, or you want fast and made of torpedoes and guns, it's really up to you. But all of these cruisers are pretty decent, and we actually start to get some variation. And we see that through the rest of these lines. Each kind of country's cruiser's design has their own play style, whether you go for speed, or you go for rate of fire, or you go for a mix of both. We see that more and more the higher we go. So that does complete today's video. Next week we'll be going over tier 3 battleships. So we actually start to see some pretty decent battleships, and we'll also see the return of Mikasa, Kawachi, and Danton, considering they can also be tossed into tier 3 games. But I promise it's the last time we'll see those. So next week is tier 3 battleships, and that will wrap up all tier 3 ships. So we'll have our comparison of all tier 3 ships at the end, and compare gun ranges, healths, and all that jazz. So join me tomorrow while we go, or not tomorrow, next week, as we go over the rest of the information there. So again, thank you for watching, and take care.